Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Thought Leader Thursday, episode 14. Welcome with this morning, Elise.
Hi, Francis. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We are talking about the invisible bottleneck. It is truly invisible. Most people don't know that there is one, actually. So, we want to transform insight into action with you guys before it becomes regret.
Yeah, and when you and I were speaking about the title of the show, we're saying like, there is this place where good ideas go to die, right? And on the one side it's funny, and on the other side it's actually quite sad because so frequently we have great ideas and then something stops us. So if we just had to think, everyone watching right now, just think about one area in your life that you would love to improve. I bet you can think of a few things that you could do to improve that. And I guess the question is like, why are you not doing it, right? And it's not enough just to have ideas and think about things. It's the action that really makes a difference. And that's what we want to talk about today. So this quote here that we have, it isn't the dreamers who have good lives, it's the doers. Remember the three P's of success: passion, planning, and perseverance. Wow, there's a lot of gold in that quote.
hmm hmm And I remember also we were talking about, and we'll talk more about how the mind works, how to change paradigms. Essentially, what we're saying is that there is definitely a gap between what we know and what we do. And now we've just established that the people that are very successful, they're the doers. And what's in the way of knowing and doing are basically our subconscious mind. Like, this is what's in the way. And what we also talked about is that right now society, most of the things that people do, they're always waiting for something on the outside to change, or they're gathering information. So we talked about just the conditioning of society with school. We gather information, and then we're being rewarded by gathering information. So we study the books, and then we get an exam, and then we are graded based on that. Not only we're learning, but we're also forming an identity. So that means that if I haven't learned well the knowledge and I fail at a point in time, just a point in time, and then I get a letter F on my exam, then they're saying you're a bad student. And you do that enough time, then you realize that this is my identity, just because it started by accumulating a lot of knowledge and lots of knowledge, and you're being rewarded. If you're a student, you're a good student, but that doesn't mean that it's going to do anything in your life. All you've done is gathering the information. And so how do you apply the information? And I think we also even thought of how many books do we read? And all we do is just accumulating the knowledge, or we go to events and we jot things down, and we're like, yes, I'm going to do this. Life comes back home on Monday and we don't take action. So we're just a bunch of people gathering information. And that's why even in the training industry, if you're not looking at the core of everything to make a permanent change, you got to go at the core source of what creates the action. And that's what we're going to talk about today, really, with the paradigms, like how they form and how can we change them.
Yeah. Yeah. And but what you're saying about the education system is quite frightening, really. If you just think about wanting to gather knowledge, and so often we feel like we aren't ready and we want to read another book or listen to another podcast or speak to one more person. And, as much as it's great having information, nothing happens until you put into action. And I think often it's that moment where you feel that you're not ready, that you just have to go for it. You have to back yourself. You must just start taking action. And it's scary at the time, but that's when you actually, you're showing up for yourself. And often there are things that you can't read in books. You have to experience it yourself to actually get that experience and then go and do that thing. So, for me, I guess it was learning that doing something for the first time, you're never going to be excellent at it, right? Like, regardless of how well you prepare, you could be good, but there's always ways to improve. And I think it's, the one big lesson for me was being okay with being bad at something, accepting that the first time we do the webinar, or the first time you play a new sport, or whatever you're doing, cooking a new meal, like every time you do something for the first time, it won't be perfect. And I think when you can start embracing that and going, I'm going to take the action anyway, and I'm going to keep improving, I'm going to keep getting better, that's when you really start showing up for yourself and gaining a lot of confidence, because you're going, I'm doing this thing regardless, and I know I'm going to keep working at it to get better and better over time.
Absolutely. I love the fact that, yeah, confidence is not created beforehand. It's actually being, well, I mean, it could. And most of the time, it's being created as we're doing things because we just learn and we realize I'm actually pretty good. Like I can continue to do it and I survive. I'm thinking of
Yeah,
the first time I did
it
improv
wasn't
and
that bad.
I was doing improv and I don't know how I'm going to show up, but improv is that you're being thrown in a situation that you can never even forecast. It's impossible. And when we're thinking about business, it's great to know that, yeah, we're gonna suck probably in the beginning, and that's okay. That's required. That's really required. Otherwise, we're not gonna advance towards our dream. And a story that I was sharing with you for me is I love to ask myself if I'm in that situation because I've done this jumping the cliff, and I was so afraid, like 40 feet, and that was pretty high. And then I heard this from a founder. I think it was Kajabi Founders, and it was talking about taking action. And the example that he gave was, it's like you when you're at the on the board of the cliff and you're reading a book about how to jump. And now you're like, okay, I'm going to learn how to jump the cliff. And I'm reading the book and I'm reading the book and this is great. And I'm taking notes and I'm like, once I know how to do it and I read the book, now I'm going to jump. But then fear kicks in, which is also the bottleneck, right? The bottleneck is the paradigm. So fear kicks in and you're thinking, well, maybe I should ask someone that has jumped before. So because
Let
they
me
really know
get
how
into
it's
more
going to happen.
information. Yeah.
And then they get more information. This is how you jump. That's what I think I read. Yeah, really? Okay, that's perfect. But then by the time that you've read everything and that you consulted with so many different people and they all have their own opinions, then you're thinking, well, it's been a while that I read that book, so I should probably read the latest book about jumping, and now I'll know how to jump. On and on and on, and really, at the end of the day, the best way to learn is just to jump, which is why I think Mel Robbins has a great trick on that, saying the 5 second rule:
Hmm.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you jump. And I wish I knew this trick before when I was at the cliff jumping, because I my legs were starting to really shake, and people were kind of laughing around me. And a kid that was just down on the boat is like, "Chicken!" I think he actually helped me to jump. But the
You're
point
like,
is
no, don't
that
say that.
it was really so difficult. The more I waited, the harder it was, because now I started to envision worst case scenarios. What's gonna happen? You look at the water moving. You're in your head. This is torture. Like the torture is before you do the jump, and when you're up in the air, well, I guess the only way that's happening is that you're going in the water. That's all. So that was the best thing that I've learned, to just do it. And months after, actually, we did the jump again, and that guy was right. He's just yell a mantra, and as soon as the mantra is done, you jump. And
Mhm.
so it's really being in action. We think that we need more information, but at some point you got to make a decision. And I shared with somebody today, actually, this other great quote from Matthew McConaughey. Like, I think he wrote The Green Light. That was one of his book. And he said, you just go find out. Just go find out. Like, we our mind is unfortunately too many times a master as opposed to our heart. And the mind is very clever, so it's always going to find a good excuse as to turn right, turn left. I'm going to give you all the reasons why to turn right, or all the reasons to turn left. And instead of using our intuition or using our heart and just make that decision, go find out. And if it's the wrong place, then you can change. You can actually go to at least that right is not the right direction. You can go left now. So yeah, it's so important for me, I think, to really remind myself and reminding the people that are watching that it's not about the knowledge. It's really about creating an action and going through that terror barrier that we'll talk later, but we'll talk a little bit about today. But you gotta take action.
Yeah, and what you were saying now is such a good example of us like just getting stuck in our heads, right? And I think that Our mind can so easily like run away from us. So if we look at this Albert N. Gray quote, it's one of my favorites because he talks about the common denominator of success. And I feel like most people, if you ask them if they want to know a secret of success, they would say yes, right? And I love this one where he says the common denominator of success is informing the habit of doing things that failures don't like to do. And it's so interesting because I think if you speak to most people, there's certain things that they don't like. They may not like cold calling if they're in a sales environment, or whatever the case may be, or waking up early when it's dark and cold and going for a run to exercise. Like no one, I wouldn't think would say, I enjoy waking up in the dark when it's freezing. But I think it's the outcome that you want, right? So there's certain things that people that are successful are disciplined enough to just create a habit out of it, right? So I'm waking up at 5 a.m. regardless because my body's used to waking up, or I'm making those phone calls because I've set time aside and that's what I'm doing. And I think, it's the art of creating that habit that makes people successful. It's not necessarily that they happen to find this certain thing easy or enjoyable versus other people. I think they've just done it so many times that it's become a habit. And then when it becomes a habit and you become good at it, you actually start enjoying it over time, right? But I think it's that discipline that was such a big lesson for me because you know, I think Bob Proctor talks about discipline as being giving yourself a command and following it. And for me it was such a big one because I think so often we go, oh, I don't feel like it, or not today, or I'll start tomorrow, or and and as much as you can do that, and often you haven't necessarily told someone about it. So no one else is holding you accountable and you don't have to feel embarrassed because there's no one else to see that you've let yourself down. But deep down inside, you are letting yourself down, right? And I think that um, sticking to what you're committing to and showing up for yourself and doing what you say you're going to do, that's actually the most powerful part because you're showing yourself that you're willing to do the hard things to get to where you want to go. And I think learning that, you're making yourself proud every single day when you do those hard things, that's when that like the real confidence grows, right? Because you're like, I'm a person who does hard things. I'm a person who does what I'm saying I'm going to do. I'm the person who does things that don't seem sexy and convenient at the time, but I know it's going to give me the result and I'm going to do it for that reason.
Yeah, and there's so much gold in what you're saying. When I'm thinking of last session, we were talking about a worthy ideal, we're talking about a vision. And, one thing that's very important to know is that we must change our thinking in order to create something new in our life. So that's why when we hear that little voice that said, I don't feel like it, feeling is, and we will explain how it works for the paradigms, feeling is really a matter of the subconscious mind. So feeling is not, oh, I feel like it. That's actually almost like a thief in the night that steals you from your dreams because it's just the one that's familiar that takes over instead of the command that you give to yourself into a new thinking, into a new way of being and acting towards a goal. Because if you don't change your way of thinking, your way of feeling, and in your action, nothing's going to change. You're just going to stay in the familiar zone. And I think when we hear that little voice, it's just comfortable. It's just a comfortable place where we are. And it's interesting. I just clicked. I saw something this morning, and I want to read it before we explain the mind. But it's just to show how being not that great in the beginning is essential. And I'm sure that a lot of people know Robbie Williams, right? Like he's a great singer. And I didn't know that, but like I'll read the email because it just shows how important it is to take action and fail. So he said, when you think of Robbie Williams, that was actually by Daniel Presley, an amazing guy that talks about what are his book, Key Person of Influence, and also Oversubscribe. Highly recommend. I know I'm looking down. This is because
it's right next to you, clearly.
It's on the floor. So here's what he said. He said, when you think of Robbie Williams, you probably think of big hits. Millennium, Angel, Let Me Entertain You. With over 75 million albums sold, there's no doubt Robbie's one of the biggest British artists on the past 25 years or perhaps ever. What if I told you though that most of Robbie's songs were failures? That might surprise you, but look at the numbers. Robbie's released 299 songs across 11 studio albums.
Mm.
61 of these are covers, so we'll forget from those from the time being. That means he's written and recorded 238 of his songs. Out of those, 14 became hits singles in their own right. That's 14 out of 238, 6%. And 6% success rate to become one of the biggest artists in the world with a network of $300 million. So it goes to show prolific beats perfect. Action beats perfect, really. I always tell entrepreneurs not everything you create will be a hit, and it doesn't need to be. Your job isn't to get it right every time. Your job is to stay in the game long enough for the right ideas to find traction. Be willing to put yourself out there, publish, ship, launch, test again and again, because in business, just like in music, you only need a few hits to change your life. That was so good.
Wow. That is so good. It reminds me to kind of bring it back to a business setting, because I know people often when they're launching new products, they say, if you're not embarrassed about the product that you're launching, you've launched too
Too,
like you've gone
too
too
late.
long, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like it's never going to be perfect, but you need to get out there and you need to get feedback and you need to get people using it, because so often you get stuck in this kind of loop where everyone's like overthinking it and you're trying to tweak small things, and as much as we try and anticipate what clients want, you can't, right? You just need to get it out there. It's not going to be perfect, it's going to be ugly, it's going to be manual in the background, and then once you have the feedback, you iterate and you improve. And that quote that you said, you need to stay in it long enough, that just comes back to persistence and perseverance. You can't try something once. Imagine he released one album, or he had like 10 songs and he's like, yeah, no one likes me, so let me just go home and I don't know, do whatever else. And it's the people that are willing to go, I believe in myself, I'm going to keep going, I know I have the talent. And now look what happened, because he was willing to go through that hard time.
Yeah, and to me, the way I read it is, when he says publish, that we're publishing right now. Like that means that we can actually, as a matter of maybe have 6 episodes out of 100 that are hits, like so big that it really truly impact. They're all good, right? But it's just to say that we don't need to think about that. We give it all our best and we learn along the way. And that could be the same about the sales presentation, the sales script that we have, the phone calls, the demos, everything. How many, if Robbie Williams was able to have huge success with 6% success rate, imagine what's available when we let ourselves not being distracted or feeling bad or not worthy because of the failures. I think it's, the, what's her name? Sarah Blakely, when she said, her dad was always talking to her about, what did you fail at today? And it was really a way of reframing failure as just a learning experiment. That's all it was. And so now I feel like we can talk about why is that so difficult for us to make those changes. And it's really to learn how the paradigms are formed. So, when you look at how the mind works, and we kind of alluded already with the percentage, but 95% of everything that we do, like that's not about the knowing, that we do is on autopilot. It's on autopilot. It's your subconscious mind, your paradigms, a multitude of fixed habits. And only 5% is conscious. So going back to command, like you're really commending yourself, and I'm choosing, no matter what, how I feel this morning or whatever this week, or this, like in this moment, I choose and I commend myself to keep on going because my vision is so worth it, and because I'm excited, and I'm not going to let any external circumstances dictate how I feel, how I act and feel. Feel, act, and feel. That's two times feeling. Lots of feeling in that. But the point is that that's what drives us. 95%. That's huge. And you'll talk about how to rewire your brain, but essentially there's a great exercise that I know you will share, but the way to rewire brains are either 2 ways. One is a shock, and that's not a good one normally, and that would be something like a doctor tells you that you must change because otherwise you might die. Or it's constant space repetition. And we'll give you an exercise where you can really identify and how to rewire your brain. And the thing is that 95% that controls everything controls your body or your action, which creates your results. So how do you know what you're thinking or what your subconscious is thinking? Take a look at your results. Take a look at your results. Maybe you want to add something to it before we do the exercise.
Yeah, I think just the awareness that so much of this is programmed in us, and that it starts from like a really young age. So, a paradigm is kind of your belief system and your habits, and even basic things like what language are you speaking? Like we learn these things as a young age because it's everywhere around us. It's our families, the people around us are saying certain things, they're speaking in a certain way, and that's how we pick it up. That's how kids start to walk, right? You see other people doing it, and through repetition, you're like, hey, I also want to do that thing. And you keep doing it. And, as adults, we get to change that. So it may have started at a young age. And man, I really hope this kind of information gets taught to kids at a young age, because you get certain habits and paradigms through your childhood, just from observing everyone around you. But then once you get older, you can start deciding whether that serves you or not. And this kind of information is so empowering, because you then can choose, is this working for me or not? Are the results you have right now, is that the life you want to live? Is it the career or the relationships or the personal situation you want? And if it's not, then you need to start thinking, what is creating that? And as Francis says, like you think, and then your body feels, and then you take the action. So the action is what actually gives you the results. But that action is coming right back to your subconscious mind, right? So you need to go back into that operating system to make those changes if you want the results to change.
Yeah, and I guess maybe people will be able to see it. Like, so we do have a stick person. That's a little bit later on, but we talked about it. It's so, as you like, now what we don't see on this picture is that line in the middle, and that line in the middle is just to kind of give a visual representations of your mind, and that's your conscious mind. And so the reason why it's so wide open initially, and that's what Elise was talking about, is that we've been conditioned, we've learned at a young age, we didn't even have this capacity, this kind of bar to accept or reject the information. And not only that, a lot of the learning we got has been shown to us through TV programming. And the worst, and I talked about it actually in a podcast this morning, is that the type of brain wave that we have, if we can go into that neuroplasticity, how it works, is that it's in a suggestive state, like it's in an alpha state, and you're learning or you're watching news, for example, in the morning, and you're watching news at night. This is the moment where you're so suggestible to all the information that comes in. And it was actually done through repetition, and it became rock solid, your subconscious mind. And this is where your paradigms are, like all the sets of belief and habits. And the paradigms are really dictating how you're making decision. They're dictating your logic. They're dictating how you think about time, how you think about money, how you think about love. It's all at the source of all your reality. And it's usually, and we can hear it also in other people's language, even though in the way that they express themselves when they speak. It's a dead giveaway of their belief system. And we got to pay attention to how we talk. So yeah, the subconscious the point is that subconscious is what drives everything. And the way to change it is to take that command from your conscious mind and really, maybe you want to ask yourself, what's the purpose of the vision that I have? Do I have enough conviction? Why is the time now to act? Why is the time now to change? If you have enough of that conviction, now we'll change. We'll explain how you can change and rewire your brain if you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So the exercise of rewiring your paradigm, and actually, I guess just understanding what it is right now. Because if we had to say to people, like, what are your beliefs? I think a lot of people don't think like that, right? We're so busy doing, and our life is busy, and taking that moment of reflection and just going, is my life the way I want it to be, and what can I do about it? So, like a few steps that you can take just to really unpack this for yourself is to firstly think about a gap that you have in your life. Think about one thing that you should be doing, but you aren't. So what is that one kind of gap? And it's always easier to kind of work on one thing at a time, so that you can focus on that. And once you've identified that, then start asking these uncovering questions like, what belief is driving this behavior? Is it something like, I don't have time, or I never get things right anyway, or, I'm not good enough to do it, or I always fail? Like those words always make me very worried, because that often is such a good indicator that there's a paradigm there, because you're so set in your beliefs. And then you want to start going, what is the opposite of that, right? What can I do what can I believe that's a complete opposite and that'll serve me better? So if I say I never have enough time, how about I have enough time for everything that's important for me? What is that opposite behavior that'll really serve you? And then it's the beauty of repetition. So if we think about how we learned the language, or how we learned how to speak, or walk as kids, you did it over and over and over again. And if you think about like a little toddler trying to stand up and they fall, and they're trying to stand up and they fall, and they take one step and they fall. I mean, if you think as adults, we tend to be so impatient, right? We want to try things once or twice and be good at it. And if you just go back to like that childlike belief, and I'm going to keep doing this. I know it's going to happen. Like, I need to learn to ride a bike. I know it's going to happen. It may take a little bit longer or shorter, but that repetition of just doing it over and over again with paradigms, that is so important. So step 4 is just this repetition daily, right? So we encourage people to have a journal, or to write things down every day, or have a goal card that we've spoken about before, in terms of read what you want, envision like that dream life that you want, or this change that you want to make. Write it down. Think about it, read it in the morning, think about it and read it in the evening. Again, as you said, you're so suggestible in the morning and the evening. When I go to bed, I repeat my goal over and over again while I'm like, my head's on my pillow, because I want that to be the last thing I think about when I go to sleep. And then it's about taking action, right? So I think it's that repetition is helping your mind get familiar with it. It's almost getting ingrained in you need it to be so deep that at a gut level, I'm believing this thing. I know I have enough time for everything that's important for me. I know I can do this thing. And then you need to start backing yourself and doing the thing. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be scary, but it's going to feel so good when you do it. And I think when we start doing those 5 steps, in terms of identifying where the gap is, discovering the paradigm, creating that opposite thought that's going to serve you to reach your goal, your repetition daily, and then taking action, those are so powerful to make big changes in your life.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you talked about the toddler, because, one of my brand is resilience element. And the third component is certainty. And I always talk about this, the fact that we were toddlers. We already have all the resilience in the world to accomplish anything we want. And I think that as a toddler, the reason why we ended up walking is because we had 100% certainty that it would happen. It was not like, I tried a million times. Now I think
This
I'm
is not for
crawling.
me.
I'm crawling. You guys continue to walk. I'm crawling. I failed. I'm good. We just know. It's so certain. And so how do we nurture that certainty? And that's, for some, it's really about repetition. And one of the things that I would love the audience to understand is that this is not woo-woo, this is working. Because the reality is, if you truly, and I say that because from experience, after repeating and repeating and repeating, I've realized that all the results I have in my life are a direct reflection of the thinking that I had about myself or about the reality. It was a math, like 1 and 1, 2. Like that's exact, like it gives me the exact result. This is a law. So if you choose to believe right now that your thinking led you to where you're at, and you're wanting to have something different, you got to change that thinking. And that's math. So if you understand that, like, it might not even take that much time, because usually, I remember when I first did my affirmations, you part of your mind or subconscious mind, and the paradigm's like, but it's not going to work. That's a limiting belief right there. Because if I say, I'm doing my this, but it's not going to work. I negate everything and it's never going to work. And then I'm going to have the evidence, not because the affirmation doesn't work, not because I repeat and it doesn't work. It's because unconsciously I'm telling myself, yeah, but it doesn't work. So if you, and I think it's seriously, this is so important to know that this is working by law. So if you think that your business will fail eventually because there's more competition and it's always hard to find, well, that's what you're going to create. That will be exactly what you're going to create. And then you're going to end up saying, see, I told you. Yeah, but you created that. You created that. And I know that it's also a question of focus. And it's a question of, where do I put my attention? Do I put my attention on worry and fears, you know? Or do I put my attention about excitement of the goal? And, the fear and excitement is pretty much the same physiology. Like the physiology of fear and excitement is the same. The only difference is that one, you're expecting something great, which is excitement. The other one is expecting something bad. So what do you assume? What do you expect? If you're the toddler assumes that he's going to walk. And he walks. So what are our assumption? And so, like, I love the like identifying the gap is to see where are my limiting beliefs and to flip it over. And still, once you flipped it, do you still have some of the limiting beliefs? Because you can say, oh, I think I'm powerless, and now I'm going to say I'm powerful, but I don't really believe it. But I don't really believe it, then that's going to create more of that. So it's really about saying, hey, I know it's math. I know my mind is actually creating my reality. It's a law. It's direct. Subconscious is going to equal my action. Action is going to equal my result. So what thoughts should I choose then? And I embody it now, despite what's happening on the outside. Because if it's still happening, it's almost like there's a lag. There's a little bit of a delay, before it starts to really move forwards into a new reality. So knowing that it's going to take a little bit of time, and like the toddler, yeah, it's going to take some time, but I know I'm going to walk. Then we're changing reality.
I so many people talk about goals and they're like, yeah, but I don't necessarily need the new boat or car or whatever. But goals are about growth, and I think this personal growth of, I'm going to do what it takes. I'm going to do the hard things when no one's looking. And as you say, be persistent enough to know, just because I have a positive thought today doesn't mean the thing arrives tomorrow, right? Like there's a time period where that growth needs to happen. And I know many of you are probably listening to this going, yeah, Francis, this sounds really easy. It can't be that simple, right? But the fact that it is like universal law, and your thoughts create your reality. Like where you are today is a culmination of decisions and thoughts and things you've done over a long period of time, right? So you may be thinking that this sounds really simple, but it's often the simple things that are actually really, like, you need a lot of focus to execute them really well, right? And only you can do this. Like, only you know what you're thinking, and only you can make a decision to carry on with that thought pattern or not, right? No one can do it for you. You can't throw money at this problem. You can't have your parents or your friend help you. Like, this is on you, right? And this is like the ultimate responsibility. You have a decision on what you think. If your mind is spiraling, thinking about bad things and going down a negative spiral, we've all been there. You need to pull yourself out of it. You need to choose to think about something good. Start writing the opposite. Start writing positive things. Go for a walk. Phone a friend. Like, do anything else. Get your mind out of that, because it's that endless loop of negative thinking that is not doing anyone any good, and only you can change it. And I think once we realize that it's a discipline of thought that we can control, but once we get that in place, once we start controlling our mind well enough to go, I'm going to repeat the good things. Imagine how many times you've overthought like something bad that's happened. And if you think about, I was focusing that energy on good things, on this is a new idea, or this is what I want to do, or this is how I'm going to show love to someone that I really appreciate. Imagine how many great things you would have done, right? Because our mind tends to like overthink negative things, but not positive ones. So once we choose to think about good things, things that serve us, things that help us get towards our goal, that's when that huge change starts to happen.
Absolutely. And when you say that, I think that if the audience have some issues, for example, in their personal or professional life, one of the things that I think helps to shift this thinking is to be grateful. And I think I shared with you that, there's one of my client,
Absolutely.
he had a big challenge. He actually lost, in starting day trading, 85% of his whole portfolio. That's not a small thing. And he started. And here's the exercise that I gave him. I said, okay, so can you have a list of 10, which could be ambitious, I know for many, but I said a list of 10 things why you're actually happy about this thing that happened. And I think the biggest that he discovers, like, I'm so happy and grateful that it happened now, because in 5 years
Oh,
from now, if I didn't have the discipline, he realized, like, I've learned something. I'm glad that now I'm going to have more discipline into what I'm doing. I'm going to watch my things more closely.
mm,
And I'm so happy I've learned that, because if I didn't have this discipline, because everything goes up, it goes up, it goes up. And then 5 years
nice.
later, 85% down, you're like, so now he's like, really, oh, thank you for this lesson. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great
So,
lessons.
yes. So, but now in the context of knowing doing gap, I think, and choosing the thoughts, like you said, like, I love that. It's giving empowerment. We can choose our thought. And it might be difficult sometimes to choose your thought when it's negative around you or you're facing a challenge. But again, there is something that's really good in that. And if you ask yourself, can I find 10 reasons why what I'm struggling with right now in business or in my life are a good thing? Then you realize, I've learned a lesson, so I'll keep on doing, because I'm getting better and better at what I'm doing. Or I've realized that now it's my time to go into a new chapter of my life, whatever it is. And I'm so grateful that I have these lessons, because it's going to make me stronger, better. Or I realize that this is not what I want. The point is that once we start to really realign our thinking into a better zone, like, gratitude is very powerful to help us to get to that point. And now we can keep on doing actions instead of saying, well, I tried, but it didn't work out, so I'm
Yeah,
not doing it
guess
again.
walking is not for me.
And you look at Robbie Williams, perfect example. How many hits he missed, really? And that's where it takes your will and also your certainty, you can say. But and are you really involved, emotionally involved with your goal? Like, I'm pretty sure that for Robbie Williams, it didn't matter how many times he missed his hits, because he loved the music, he loved the performance. Like you said, the purpose of the goal is to grow, and that's all there is. Because if you look at the stats, like, it'd say I'm failing 94% of the time, or I'm succeeding 6% of the time, and I have 300 million in my bank account. Not
Mm,
bad, or good, to reframe the language. So yeah, that was really powerful. I'm glad that we were talking about all of these things, and now it's time to actually kind of do a little bit of a summary of all the
mm.
key takeaways of what we talked about today.
Yeah. So the first one is knowing isn't doing. You can intellectually understand something, but unless your subconscious beliefs are aligned, you won't take action and then results won't change.
And I think we've mentioned enough and enough that paradigms run the show. 95% of everything. So those are your mental programming. It drives your action. It drives your result. So the only way to change things is to change your thinking and to upgrade your programming. And we gave you an exercise for that.
Absolutely. And then number three is you can't outwork a misaligned mindset. So, your subconscious mind that we just said runs the show. If that is contradictory to where you want to go, you're not going to get success. So, doing that exercise where you uncover those paradigms and really start proactively changing them to serve you is where you're going to get the right actions to get you to your goals.
And the next one is, I got a little coin that was given by the organization. Hopefully, yes, I think people are going to be able to
Nice.
see it. So,
Yeah.
change starts internally. So when you live your life from the inside out and upside down, and I'll explain. So you got to change internally in order to create something on the outside. The problem is we are too many times waiting for something on the outside in order to make a decision. And we talked about decision in our last session. Decision is so important. And the upside down means more about, if you feel disempowered, you feel powerless or meaning, whatever it is, that's kind of a low vibration. And we don't create that much greatness in our life when we're in that level. So, by the upside down, is what would be the, if you have everything, the higher self of, the version of you that already succeeded, it's at a high frequency. It's a positive frequency. It's the frequency of excitement, joy, gratitude, love. You're so, and now from that space, we're creating a whole different life. And so it's inside out and upside
Upside
down.
down.
That's how it works. I had to look at, because I want to say there's another law that exists. They say from above as so below. So I was like, okay, so it's as above or it's upside down. So that's really how we create a beautiful reality.
Yeah, and the last one is repetition. So if you want to rewire your thinking, you need to repeat it over and over again. That's when it starts internalizing. You want this thing to get into your subconscious mind, and that happens through repetition.
Yeah, that was it. That's how we can crush that bottleneck. No more bottleneck. Taking action. And I'm talking about taking action. If you really want to transform your life, your leadership, highly suggest that you speak to Elise. She's an amazing leader. She's actually even coaching me at times personally, and she's so good at rewiring my brain. I'm like, you're so right. I know this. And so thank you. And you can reach out to by scanning that. And if you want to also talk to me, I'll be more than happy to talk to men that wants to really achieve something meaningful in their life. I call that the Night Club. So it's with a K. We're not in a discotheque. It's really about it's really about honoring our life and being empowered, being alive, being free internally first, so that we create a great life. So yeah, that's how we can connect with us. So yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
there's Francis does some amazing events for his nightclub, and he's got some great things on LinkedIn and extra events and webinars for people. So I really encourage you to follow you and to scan the QR code. I often see on LinkedIn, where is the best place to hook up with you, Francis, and learn more about the nightclub?
The nightclub, it would be nightclub with a K, nightclub.co. So that's where you have a little bit of a description of how that works. But the best way, DM me on LinkedIn, just ask, hey, I heard about the nightclub. Because the thing about it is that we really make sure that the people have honoring values of, humility, uh, excellence, respect, optimism, integrity, and courage. Those are very important values that if they don't resonate with anyone, and they're not going to be a knight. And the vision of that, and thank you for asking, actually, the vision of that is to create the best men's club in the world where you can travel anywhere. I love to travel. And I've had the chance of visiting a lot of countries. And my dream is that that's my vision, that you can go to any big cities in the world and know that you can be supported by men like you on a mission to accomplish something that's meaningful in their life. So yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
what a powerful vision you have, and I'm really excited to see the journey unfold. It's really amazing. So excited to see what the nightclub has in store. But thank you so much, Francis. Great conversation. I really love having these discussions and learning alongside you. So everyone, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you next time for episode 15 is next time, right? So we'll see you next time. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, guys. Thank you, Elise. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.